everyone, MTest here, and I understand that everyone is calling for buffs for Raiden Shogun. I understand that I've even said some stuff is underwhelming. I tested out the character at C6, and I was upset about some of the performance, and I wasn't very impressed, especially with some of the constellations like C6. I understand people are complaining about some of the constellations like C2, saying, how can you put so much value behind a constellation? But we've seen this stuff since Klee. I argued about this stuff on the Klee banner, getting a 500% bonus damage when you swap off the character. Diluc gets amazing with constellations. Xiao isn't even the same character. He completely functions differently with his constellations. You can make that argument for every character in the game, but one thing you have to remember is the majority of people are free to play, and a lot of the people that are complaining, they are whales. They're using the character and saying, she's not as good as I thought. But there's a couple things that I wanted to discuss, and I think for a lot of you, this is going to be really good news about BAAL. I want to talk about C0. I want to talk about some weapon choices. I want to talk about some other things that are going to, go your way as a player, especially if you're free to play or a low spender. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Red Shoes. Now, there was an animated movie, Red Shoes and the Seven Dwarfs, but this is Wood Bear World. This is a brand new game, and pre-registration has started right now, so click that link down below and get yourself pre-registered, baby. You can get yourself a free character as well as a bunch of gold. They've got co-op, they've got a roguelike that's different every time you play it, an endlessly spawning world mode, and a boss raid with tons of different enemies, tons of different attack patterns, and some of the best loot available in-game, if you can actually beat them. These honestly look pretty intense, so if you're trying out a new game, if you're interested in a new game, this is free to play. Click that link down below and get yourself pre-registered for Red Shoes, the Wood Bear World. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into the content. After you click the link, Now, the constellation issue, I understand that C6 is pretty terrible. If you spent that much money on a character, you want it to be good, and this one is very, very weak. It doesn't do hardly anything. But this is more damage, this is more damage, this is essentially Wolf's Gravestone, this is amazing, this is really good if you want to make her almost like a main DPS, and then this one here just makes it so you can have max resolve pretty much every time you ult. These constellations do bring a lot of value, and people are arguing that all of her value is hidden behind constellations. You could say that about every character in the game. Xiangling gets 40% more duration on her Pyronado. Is she a bad unit if you don't have that? I don't think so. Is she a hell of a better unit if you do? Duh! Literally every character in the game does stuff like that. I mean, Barbara gets a revive. Okay, maybe that's not as good, but every character in the game has some pretty nutty stuff that changes the value of the unit and makes them stronger. This isn't a new thing, we know this. But I think that BAAL, as a support, even at C0, she does some things that are pretty interesting. She's giving your team free damage for your burst abilities. She is giving you passive damage with like 100% uptime. And so there are some things going on here that I think are overlooked. She thrives with one of the best universal artifact sets in the game, the Emblem of Severed Fate, which is fantastic, and so that's a bonus in her column. But obviously in the test run, she's got the Engulfing Lightning, right? And so if you don't have this weapon, you swap over to BAAL, she feels a little underwhelming. Yeah, she doesn't have a 5-star weapon. They do that to every single test run character in the game. But here is the thing. I can imagine most of you haven't fished for 15 hours, or 20 hours, or whatever it takes to get the catch. Now, as a content creator, some of these people are smashing it out in 8 hours, or 10 hours, or 12 hours, because they can jump to a bunch of people's worlds. But if you're just playing solo, I'm sure many of you don't have the catch, but I don't even know if it's possible to get the catch because of the fish respawn rates, at least not max refinement. And so, one of the best weapons that's available in-game for her, you probably don't have, or you don't have it max refined, and so a bunch of her value is gone right there. And when you get that weapon and you throw it on her, she's going to crush, almost like you had a 5-star weapon. And so people that are maybe testing her with something like a Favonius Lance, I thought the Favonius Lance, even at R5, I had good artifacts on a whale account, it didn't feel great. But it didn't have that crazy damage that the catch has, that nice base attack, the energy recharge. And so there is a great weapon coming, and you can pair it with a very solid artifact set, your BAAL will hit hard. But here is the big kicker that I don't think people are talking about. I understand that whenever a new character comes out and there's a new boss associated with them, it takes time to get all the talents. And so if you compare, Eula at release or another DPS character at release, maybe she does feel underwhelming. Maybe Raiden Shogun is underwhelming. But a lot of you probably, what are your talents right now? 166, 157? What are your talents right now? I guarantee it's not 9 and 9. So, talents are one of the biggest upgrades to a character. That value cannot be taken away, and I guarantee the mass majority of you, because it's literally impossible until maybe next week, you can't have enough talent materials to level her up properly and use her properly and hit like a truck with her, because you can't get beyond 6 or maybe even 7 this week. Some of you might have 8 if you're using Dream Solvent and depending on your luck, but I understand that, there's probably 20% of the damage MIA right now from many of your accounts. And so once you can get those talents and you can catch her up, she's gonna hit harder. No, Raiden Shogun doesn't hit as hard as my Xingqiu. My Xingqiu is C6! He's got double crowns. No shit. You can't even level this character up properly yet. You know what I mean? And I feel like maybe that's a problem too. Some of you have been playing for 10 months. You've been playing forever. You've got these cracked out characters with cracked artifacts, maybe even some refinements on your weapons, and you might not have Raiden's weapon. You might not have a good emblem set because that just came out, right? And you might not have all these talents leveled up. Obviously, a Xingqiu with a god tier noblesse set with crit rate and crit damage, and a refined sacrificial sword, and talents is going to be a great character. There's so many supports in the game that are amazing, and I think that Raiden Shogun is better than people say, but she might not be amazing. She might not be absolutely god tier, but I don't think she's bad. I don't think she is bad. If you're not using Beidou, that whole problem doesn't exist. If you don't use Beidou with her, the Beidou issue is not a thing. And so that's one huge argument that a lot of people are making that you don't need to consider. Some people don't build Beidou. Some people don't like using Beidou. And I would love for that to get fixed. I pray that that gets fixed, because maybe I'd even get Raiden Shogun. But it's a non-factor for a lot of players in game. And, with the negativity that's been happening around this character, I could see a buff happening. I could also see a buff happening to Electro, because as a whole, all of the Electro reactions in this game are pretty lackluster, right? You don't have anything doubling your damage like Vaporize and Melt, right? You're not getting the CC of a Freeze comp. Yeah, you can reduce defenses, or physical defenses with Superconduct. That's pretty cool. You can overload stuff and send them flying. That's fine. But I think that this character, being in the Electro element, that's one point against, and I understand why people are mad. But I think that if you throw her into any team, she will bring value. And if you got this character, don't stress out too much, because maybe a buff is coming. But I think that it's also very important when a banner comes out to not just wish willy-nilly on the first day until some of this stuff is tested out. Because if you went based on the leaks and what the character could do in the leaks, and the fact that she worked with Beidou in the leaks and the beta testing, well, how were you supposed to know that they changed that? Many of you probably wished on the first day, you summoned on the very first day, and then they came out and people discovered it pretty much the next day. And, patience is a virtue in a gacha game like this. I'm learning that now. But I think moving forward, it's important as a community. That's why I don't hype up the characters as much as I used to. Because I want to test them. I want to see. I want to see what their banner is. I can talk about my initial impressions, but until I get my hands on them and can see them, it's really hard to hype these characters up, because I don't want to bait you into using all your Primo Gems on a character that ends up being lackluster in a lot of people's eyes. If you got Raiden Shogun, you're still gonna slap. You can beat the Spiral Abyss because, boys, I don't know who needs to tell you this, but everything in this game is pretty damn easy. This challenge here, even on the hardest difficulty, you can probably beat it with your eyes closed or even with the trial characters that they give you. The Spiral Abyss. This is the hardest piece of content in the game. Once you get to higher ARs like AR-50, AR-55, you can easily get, 30, maybe even 33 stars. You can get the mass majority of the Primo Gems out of here. No problem. And if you can't do it yet, it is not a skill issue, it is a time issue. It takes time and days of resin to get the artifacts, but you will get there eventually. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on with the Raiden Shogun. It's a time issue. You can't fight the boss enough to get her leveled up. You can't fish enough fish to get the catch R5 unless you're jumping into other people's world. And so a lot of her value is not here. So that is the saving grace, and let's hope for the best moving forward. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out Red Shoes if you want to try out a new little game. Links are down in the comment section or the description below, and I will see you guys soon.